So we've been doing salt distribution. So that is salt that used for ice melt. It's also salt for water softening and food grade salt. And then we also have a patented brine delivery system that is used for large commercial water softening applications, that rather than using water softening bags that need a lot of salt every week, we provide a system that we can use bulk loose salt to put in their water conditioning system. So we have two aspects of the business, from the auto brine business as well as our bag salt business. The trouble that a lot of consumers have is that there are so many different bags that have different labeling, and it's very difficult to determine what is the difference. And then you look at the price point and you see that there's vastly different prices for a 50-pound bag of salt, and you wonder how the salt could be different. And I say there's really 4 different buckets that you can put salt for ice melt into. And one is the cheapest, which is rock salt or halite. People use those 2 terms. The second one is a magnesium pellet. The third one is a calcium pellet. And then the fourth one is a blend, and that can be a blend of those 3 products. It can also be other products that are put into those. They can be in the form of a pellet, or it can actually be sprayed onto the calcium, or the magnesium can be sprayed onto the halite and then blended together. There's also in some blends CMA, which is used on airplane wings, and they actually also use that in parking garages, which is a very high-end ice melt. And so each one of those has a little different benefit, but those are usually the 4 different types of ice melt that people are using either at their homes or at a commercial property. Yeah, the easiest to do is you go into a store and you'll see the halite or rock salt as the cheapest alternative, so it's easy to pick up one of those bags and spread that on your property. The negative part of that is it is sodium chloride, and so you're putting sodium chloride that is eventually going to get wet as it melts the snow, and then that bleeds into your grass that's along your driveway or along your sidewalk. And so that is more used for large parking lot areas, or it is what the DOT will use for roads, because the cost is the cheapest and there is no bleeding into lawns. And so that's used in a large application. So for homeowners, it's much better to use either a blended product or a product that is less harsh on your lawn, and also it's better for your animals. And so that's where magnesium is actually a good product for sidewalks that we see a lot of our customers wanting to put down, because magnesium is actually a nutrient for the lawn, and so it will melt the ice, but it also will be nutrient for the lawn in the springtime. And it also is very pet friendly as well. So for homeowners, magnesium is a good product. It is more expensive per bag, and so that's the best. If you want to put the best down, that would be what we recommend. If you want to not spend that much for a bag of salt, you can do a blend, and that's where we have a proprietary Coat Performance Blend product that you are referencing, that you saw, that works well. It's a blue colored so that you can see how much you put down, and that has some different products in it, and it actually has some science that people don't understand about ice melt. You think you throw some salt down and you let it melt the ice, and is going to be a great example why you've got to pay a little bit of attention to science. Because if you have your driveway is full of ice tomorrow and it's 10 degrees out, and you take your halite or rock salt and throw it on your driveway, it's just going to sit there and do absolutely nothing, because it will not melt the ice that is on your driveway if it's below 15 degrees. And so that's why we actually have a blend, because a blend will have some of the calcium, magnesium, which will melt down to 25 degrees, minus 25 degrees, which that will help the rock salt also work. So you get this combination. It's actually, the science of it really is the magnesium draws moisture in the calcium generates heat, and then that helps melt the ice. And so that creates the melting the process, and then the halite will work because you have that melting process kick-started by the other products. So those are the things that you just got to pay attention to on your property. If you want the best, you maybe use mag. If you want the middle, that you would use the Co-Performance blend or another type of high-end blend. And if you want to take the chance, you can just throw the cheapest halite. Bring in actually over 200 truckloads of salt before the season of all 4 different products. And that way we have an adequate supply throughout the season. And as any one particular product gets low, we have enough relationships that we bring in more. I just brought in some more ice melt, some more truckload of magnesium. Even though I have some in stock, we ordered more magnesium just so we have extra in case this winter continues. And because of the low temperature, it requires more magnesium than it does the cheaper rock salt because of the very low temperatures. One of the unique things that's interesting about salt is that there's different types, and there's exothermic and endothermic. And one of the things people don't think about is salt. You think of putting down and it starts melting because of the salt. And actually halite does not generate any heat. It only is endothermic, in which case it causes the ice to melt at a lower temperature, which is why it works down to 15 degrees, because instead of melting at 32 or 33 degrees, it will melt at 15 degrees. But that's also why it doesn't work when it gets below 15 degrees, because it lowers the melting point. And so where if you got magnesium and calcium, they're exothermic chemicals, and so they actually generate heat. And so they'll actually create heat that will help the melting process. So if you hold it in your hand, you'll actually feel the heat. As if it gets moisture, you actually feel the heat from those 2 products. And one of the things I just talked about is how the process of those different products work is important, because if you had a lot of snow and you put a lot of rock salt down, it would actually lower the water temperature that's on your driveway to 15 degrees or something close to that. So you actually could have your dog standing in water that is 15 degrees if you use rock salt. And so that is part of the getting frost on their feet is actually part of the concern versus just the consumption versus them licking it. You know, if they get some of any of the products, some on their balls, and they come in the house and lick it, you know, there's nothing toxic about any of these chemicals or products that are used to melt the ice. And so it's more of the ability of melting, how quickly does it melt, and there is some calcium is more caustic than what magnesium is. If you take your hand and stick them in each product, your calcium hand, you'll actually feel almost a burning, tingling hand, where you won't get that sensation with magnesium. So that's for pets, the magnesium is considered the safest product, or potentially a blend if you want to put that down it. And if you're a commercial landscaper and you have ice that you need to plow off, calcium is actually the best product. It's amazing what calcium will do. It will drill down through ice, and you'll see little pellet holes down through the ice. And that's because it generates heat. And so it is the best product to very quickly drill down through ice. And then if you're going to shovel it off, it breaks that bond. And so that's a real advantage of calcium. But again, you see that more on commercial applications than you do the homeowner. Some people will ask us, can I go and grab my Morton for my water softener, or can I go grab my table salt and put it out in the driveway and will it melt? And the answer is that's the same as halite or rock salt, and it will melt it as long as it's above 15 degrees. The only reason people don't do that is the price point. And also your water softening crystals tend to be a little larger. So if you're throwing a little larger crystal size, that can be awkward to walk on. Well, the big thing that you're starting to see within the last 3 years is if you drive down the road and you see lines down the road right before the storm, those lines are liquid salt or brine, that's what you call it. And so that's a pre-treat And so what the government is doing, the DOT now, is they have a truck that will spray the roads and with brine before the storm. And then when the snow or ice comes, that brine will not allow that snow and ice to adhere to the roads. And so then when the plow comes through, you get a nice clean surface that they can plow off. So if you see that, what are those, and they don't completely cover the road. It's maybe 8 lines going right down each path of the road that will be sprayed brine on there. And you can do the same thing at your house too. You can actually pre-treat, and then that will help not allow it to bond to your sidewalk or driveway. And so that's become very, very popular. We actually have done some educational sessions at our open house, and we've had a bunch of Penn State scientists down looking at that. We've had the PA Department of Transportation coming to our open houses. And so there's a lot of universities that are doing that technology. So it's, again, you kind of question, why are they spraying water on the road? And they're not. It's actually brine, and that's to help it so it doesn't adhere to the road surface. Yeah, it's very straightforward in that before the storm comes, you want to pre-treat it, as we just talked about. And then when the storm comes, you actually just shovel off the snow. You don't try to put ice melt on top of snow unless you got maybe an inch or less. There's not this idea that if you got 4 inches of snow, you can just go out and put ice melt on it and it'll all go away. It just, there's too much volume of moisture, and it dilutes the ice melt product that you put on so that it won't work. So the idea is to pre-treat it so it doesn't bond, or even if you don't pre-treat it, shovel it off and then put the application of the ice melt on. So that gets the bulk of it off, and then that allows the product to take the last portion of it off. It also will stay there because it turns into basically a brine then and stays on your parking lot. So if you get a little bit more snow or you get snow the next day, it will still be there and help so that it doesn't bond to that surface. So we kind of say pre-treat, shovel, and then put the ice melt on. So that's the steps you want to follow. We have a chart where we show the amount that should be covered in a square yard. And so there's a pictorial, and you can see that on your website. The reality is from a quantity standpoint, it's hard to visualize just by telling you that the higher end products need less because they generate heat, so they need less. So you use 3 ounces per square, and the blend you use 4 ounces, and the rock salt or halite you use 5 ounces. So that's what does an ounce per square look like. So it's hard to describe. Again, there's a picture on our website, but part of the things that you see as you go into some of these grocery stores or other places that you're only walking on salt and you're not even touching the road and parking lot, and that's too much. I mean, the reality is there should be, if you almost think of a grass spreader, if you took your spreader and spread it, which is how it generally is applied, and that will create a nice even distribution, and that's what you need. You don't need to go back over 2-3 times so that you can't even see your driveway. That's really does no added value to add a lot more product if you scraped it off first. Liability now in commercial, but even on our residential property, if you have someone to come on your property and it's not properly cleaned, or if you have obviously a sidewalk in the city you're responsible for, and that's where we've seen more and more interest in making sure they get the right product and making sure you reduce that liability. For the safety of those walking on your property, it's important that you understand how ice melt works and how to apply it. At Cope Salt, we continue to provide education to make sure that everyone has the correct product for the application being used. If you have any feedback or questions, be sure to let us know.